Alright guys, we're back on this 04 Avalanche. I started pulling the motor yesterday, and I didn't want to. I wanted to video it, but it's such a hassle to try to video something when when you're moving around and you're underneath it. I usually start by trying to unbolt most of the stuff underneath before I hit the top, and the reason I do that is because I don't like having antifreeze and stuff drip all over my head, you know, while I'm working on it. So anyway. Yesterday I pulled, well, first thing you may notice is I pull the inner fenders out of both sides. And yes, it's kind of a pain to jack it up, pull the tires, pull all them little plastic tips, but what that does is give you access to things that you can't see from on top very well. One of the biggest is motor mount bolt. When that exhaust manifold's on there, which you can't tell now because the manifold is off, your 3 bolts on each side of the on your motor mount is right there. And you can really see them well, along with your spark plugs, manifold bolts, and everything, when you take that inner fender out. I mean, everything is right here. You can, yes, it's kind of a pain to take that inner fender out, but you can tell I can get to access a lot more stuff. Plus, the 2 upper air conditioning bolts. The lower ones are a pain, especially 4-wheel drives. But anyway, that's what I did on both sides. The manifold is well, it's loose on the other side, but I couldn't get it pulled out. So it's just kind of hanging in there. It's actually sticking straight up and down. But it'll actually be back on when I put the motor back in. I just took it off because I thought it would help kind of access stuff, but that's not really what happened. Anyway, yesterday I pulled torque converter bolts, of course the starter, all the wiring underneath. There's a loom that hooks to the front of the oil pan. It's already done. Like I said, the exhaust is done. I removed the plugs and wires. I wasn't going to, but it made it easier to turn over to get the torque converter bolts out, which the transmission's been rebuilt before, so it was easy enough to get them out. The factory ones are tight, and they're a little different actually. This is an 04. Let me walk in the garage. Let me turn the lights on first. I just got out here. Oh yeah, one of the shop lights sounds really good, doesn't it? As I've showed you before, the bolts, and I don't even know where, I put them somewhere, it doesn't make any difference. The bolts for the torque converter on the 99 to, I'm not sure what year, have that T50 Allen in there, but they're round. This is the one that came out of the 04 Avalanche. It's actually a 15 millimeter bolt, and that made it a lot easier to get a hold of and get out. I didn't even ask what the second generation of those look like, but they're a lot easier to get in and out. Also I don't have the coil packs off. This is actually off that other motor. If you remember in the last video when I was still building that engine, I took these valve covers off and that center plate. The other valve cover was unusable. Well, it's covered in plastic now. The vent hole that was on the other one got shoved in the dirt. That's what I thought had happened. It looks like a bug had got in there and actually packed that entire plate, which is really not removable. I mean, I suppose you could make it come off there and then try to beat it back into submission to get on. I think it's just sealed on there, like with a it looks like some type of it's sealed on there somehow. I'm not really sure. I could probably get it off her, but I bet it does not look right when I'm done. This one was clear full of sludge, and the more I cleaned, the more stuff kept coming out of it, so I probably won't use this valve cover either. I'll probably use the other one. The center plate cleaned up fine. Anyway, these are the coil packs that actually came off of the Avalanche, like I said, when I was looking for, just try to find another reason why it was missing. Now, I will tell you one thing I did find, which was kind of a surprise, to be honest with you. I got to turn this light off, turn it back on. That's the bad thing about those fluorescent shop lights. Quiet it. This one's may have to go away. There. Well, it sounds better, but anyway. Yeah, what was I saying? I took. It was the last couple of times I had it running, it ran really, really bad. And a check engine light came on instantly, which normally, even if you reset it or whatever, it usually took a little bit for it to pick up that random misfire. This thing was missing what I thought was worse. It was running really bad, and I couldn't understand what was going on until I was down there pulling the stuff apart. Come to find out that number 5 spark plug wire was not on the plug. Now, I took them off, did a compression check, and put them back on, and I know they were on because I drove it, and it drove fine above 1500. And then all of a sudden it didn't drive fine. So either I did not get it pushed on there all the way, or so I really don't know. I may have damaged that plug wire taking it off. So I'm going to go ahead and just get new plug wires. The plugs look good. They look, of course, like I said, they have been replaced. But I have dropped one down here in the depth somewhere. I'm sure I'll find it when I pull the motor, but it's down there somewhere where I can't. I think, do I see it? I do. I think I do see it. But I can't really tell. I pulled the skid plate from underneath. It did not hit the ground, so it's probably not broke, but of course it'll tell you if you get a misfire. So anyway, today I'm going to start taking the top of the engine off and start draining the antifreeze out of it. The only thing I have left underneath technically to do, it was just in case I had to move this, I didn't want it getting hung up, is the 2 top bolts for the air conditioning, which is I can access from on top once this air box and stuff is out of the way. Of course, I'm not going to pull the compressor out. I'm just going to lay it aside. Then, of course, the motor mount bolt. There's 1 bolt left in the transmission, which is at the top. So I'll get my jack and a big flat board or something to set underneath the transmission, jack it up, and put a little pressure on it. I actually put a couple small pieces of wood between the oil pan and the cross member so that they wouldn't separate and break that top. That ear off of that transmission. It's not something you have to do, but they do separate. It's kind of funny. You wouldn't think they would, because many old Gen 1s, till you got those clamshells up out of there, they usually wouldn't separate too much unless your transmission mount was bad. But in this case, as soon as you start loosening stuff up, stuff starts separating. So just keep that in mind. I had to pull the transmission dipstick tube up a little bit to get because it's like a captured, it's like a stud, and then it's got a nut on it, and the nut is what holds that on there. That had to come off and made it hard to get it out, so I had to pull the dipstick tube out some. I also had to pull the engine dipstick, which I needed it anyway, but I had to pull it out, get the starter out. I've never had that happen. Either I just don't remember, but yeah, I got the starter loose and pushed it back out of the hole and started dropping it down, and it would not let go. And the more I fought it, the aggravated I got. So that's when I went ahead and jacked it up and pulled the stuff apart, because I told myself I wasn't going to pull the inner fenders if I didn't have to. But what happened was that dipstick was stopping that thing from coming down. So as soon as I pulled it out, it started coming right out without any issues. So I need it anyway, and it's out of the way. And you have to pull it to pull the exhaust manifold anyway, because it actually kind of worms around or through it, if I recall. The reason I pulled the manifolds was not because it'd be easy. It was because I wanted to check them to make sure they were decent, and I wanted to see how many studs snapped off. This side did not have any problems. All of them came out. The other side already had both ends were already broken, gone. So I will have to steal a couple bolts off that other 5.3 that's in there, which is not uncommon on these. My 6 liters had a broken stud on it since I bought it in 2011. Doesn't leak, just broke. And that's real common on these, to have to drill those out of these aluminum heads, which is really kind of a pain. But anyway, so I'm going to start back on this today. I got to work tonight. I worked last night, so I'm not going to get much done today. That's why I didn't get very much done yesterday. I spent most of my time taking tires off and inner fenders, and that skid pan was covered with oil. It's kind of heavy. I started cleaning stuff up, and those bolts and everything I brought in there to start cleaning. So anyway, guys, that's where I'm at, and I probably again won't video this pulling a motor. There's hundreds of videos of pulling engines out of stuff. If you're really interested in watching that, and if you run into something or you have a question about what I did or how I'm pulling this, as far as undoing wiring or the sequence I do it, I'll try to do the best I can. It seems like I do it different every time. Depends on the circumstances. The Z71s, this is the first one I've messed with. It has 3 small, well, 1 decent sized aluminum skid pan, 1 up in the front that's plastic that I may have to remove anyway, And then there's a small one back underneath the transfer case that I had to remove when I pulled it. It just have more stuff in the way, I guess I'm saying. When I pulled that motor out of the Suburban, the 5.3, and put the 6-liter in there, I also had to pull the inner fenders out. It just makes it easier to get the stuff. If you leave the exhaust manifolds on, it's a lot easier to get to the motor mount bolts from inside there. Now, of course, if I got to do this, I got to jack it back up and pull it. But because I pulled the manifolds, I can actually reach down there with an impact once the cherry picker's hooked up. As you can see, I don't have any trouble on this side to get to those bolts. And this side, now mind you, the wiring will be gone. And so the only thing I'll be kind of in the way will be the steering shaft. So I think with a swivel, or if I got to jack this one side up and pull the tire, I can do that and get to them easy enough. So anyway, guys, I'm going to get off here and get started. So that's kind of the update and what's going on. Next time you see it, this engine will be out.